A man knocks on your door, says he wants to buy your home, and 3 hours later, he's holding a sawed off shotgun. This is the true story of Florida's forgotten madman. Did you know one of Florida's most brutal crimes was buried in the sands of a sleepy beach town ignored for decades? In 1949, a retired couple opened their door to a stranger who said that he wanted to buy their home. What they got instead was pure terror. I'm Tiffany, host of True Crime Connections, and today I'm with author Michael Gross to unravel the haunting real-life case behind his book, Madman. So, Michael, I want to say thank you for joining.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Tiffany.
This is a crazy case, and I don't know if you know my location, but I'm actually in Pinellas County, so this is not far from me.
I did not know that.
So reading this book was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I can imagine. I live in Pinellas County as well, and actually lived only about 100 yards from the murder site, which I did not know until I discovered this hidden story. And that was one of my main drivers for writing this, the curiosity that created.
I can only imagine 100 yards. You could throw a rock that far, so that's close to home.
Yeah, it was. And the house is no longer there, but the spots and a lot of the local landmarks around Pinellas County are still there. And it's when you know what happened there, it's a little spooky visiting those places.
Right. Did they tear down the home after?
Yeah, the home was torn down in the 1980s when they put up a new development, but no, they didn't tear it down right away. It sat abandoned in Crystal Beach for nearly 20 years, and it was kind of known by the local kids as the local haunted house, the place you're afraid to walk past when you're a kid. It sat way back in the woods by itself, and eventually somebody bought it and actually lived in it through the 60s and 70s, and it got demolished when they put in the new housing developments in the 1980s.
Very interesting. I know that you found a lot of people that actually lived there during this time. So that's how you were able to piece together a lot of what happened.
It did. A lot of the newspaper archives and court records gave the official part of the story, and even the newspaper, some of the unofficial parts of the story. But what really filled in the blanks was interviewing a lot of the local people that were alive then. Most of them were children, but I was able to interview one person that actually lived with Rastus Russell and knew him, and that was extremely insightful as well.
Yeah, he seems like one hell of a character. And this is real life. Like you said, this is what crime shows and movies are made of.
Yeah, what made this so intriguing, Tiffany, imagine there's this guy that he looks like a movie star. He's got rock solid body, looks like he works out, got charisma through the roof, and yet he can flip a switch just like that and turn into this violent person. And that was what made him such an intriguing character, is he wasn't like that all the time. This guy I just mentioned that lived with him, and he was only, this gentleman I interviewed was 12 years old at the time, but Russell lived with his family in Palm Harbor right off Curlew Road. And he said around the house, Rastus Russell was the nicest guy you'd ever want to be around. He said he taught me how to swim. He said he was generous, helped around the house, ate dinner, laughed with everybody. You know, he said you never would have expected him to be this person.
Well, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of personality.
Exactly.
So, what really drew you to actually write the book on this case? Was it kind of like to memorialized because since someone did died, it was Anne and Norman Browne who lived in that home. And thank God Anne lived, but unfortunately, Norman did not have the same fate.
Norman did not fare so well, no. And what drove me to write the book really was my own interest and fascination with it. As I mentioned, I lived about 100 yards, and I first discovered it when I picked up a book called Crystal Beach Shangri-La. And it was just a book that by locals that they all contributed stories of what it was like to grow up in Crystal Beach and how nice and idyllic it was, and the picnics and the playing on the water and everything. But inside there was a story by a lady by the name of Linda Henry, who told of this dark, macabre murder that happened in 1949 and how it affected the whole community. And she said when she was only a little girl, she was 6 years old, but it made this big impression on her because the day after the murder, she somehow, a 6-year-old girl, walked up to the house and looked in the windows and she saw blood everywhere. And she said that I'll never forget that scene, and I'll never forget the smell. And that smell still comes to me when I walk back to that part of Crystal Beach where that house used to be. And for that reason, I don't go back there anymore. And it just sounded so creepy and scary. I had to start digging what that story was. And that's the more I uncovered, the deeper the story got. This is not a straight murder, solve, guy goes to jail story. It's got so many little rabbit holes, and it just became so intriguing. It was like a movie. And I said, oh, this got to be a book. So I wrote the book for myself, really, to find out what happened, but everybody else can now find out too.
Right. I mean, it's very interesting, and you can almost see like how his personality changes when you read it, because he was very nice to them. You know, he's drinking tea and just having a conversation like a normal person. And like you said, just snap. And all of a sudden he was like ready to attack them. Do you think that was his motive all along?
Well, here's the thing. The official story was they had a for sale sign up and he stopped by to look at the house. The real story, from what I uncovered, was that was not the case. They knew Russell. They had met him 3 months earlier. At least he'd been at their house at least one time before. And a lot of the information I got from local interviews gave me the local gossip at the time. And the gossip was the Browns owed some type of debt, and Russell was there to collect. Now, was that some type of arrangement they had with him? Was he there on behalf of somebody else? We uncover some of that in the book. We speculate on some of it, and that's one of the things we cover in the book. But the Browns were not a random visit. They knew him, which is one reason why he sat at their kitchen table and talked for 3.5 hours and having coffee before he pulled Mr. Brown's shotgun on him. So that in itself lends credibility to the argument that he was not a stranger.
Right, right. Yeah, it does say in the book that they knew of him. I don't know how close, but they did know of him. So it's just scary. You never know who's sitting at your table with you.
Exactly. But one thing, I speculate on what the real story might be. I think I know what it might be, but I can't prove that. What I do know is they knew each other, and this was not a random visit.
Right. He had a very long rap sheet. Like, they knew of him in town.
Yeah, this guy was a well-known local hoodlum. He had grown up here since he was 10 years old. He'd been in and out of mental institutions. He'd been in and out of prison, mostly for things like car theft, breaking and entering, assault. But everybody in Palm Harbor was afraid of him. he was like the local hoodlum, and people knew to stay away from him. They knew he was trouble. He could become violent. To our knowledge, he never actually killed anybody, at least documented, although there's some speculation he may have prior to that. But nobody, the local police knew him. A lot of the locals knew him as just this kind of bad, rough guy that lived in town. Nobody suspected him of being this dark, violent murderer, but as it turned out, he was.
He even chased another couple with his car, and the woman was holding a baby. So he had zero fucks.
No. Well, these people showed up. These were neighbors, the Crumbs, that showed up at their house while he was torturing Norman and Anne Browne. And actually, Norman was already dead by the time they showed up, but they just walked into this unsuspectingly, and he shot Mr. Crumb in the gut with a shotgun and clubbed his wife over the head. He threw the baby. So he tried to kill both of them. And he left. The baby actually, from the injuries sustained, died at age 6, which was Judy Crumb, which is really, really sad. Yeah, she lived for 6 years, but those injuries eventually caused complications that she died from. It's one of the more tragic parts of the story.
Yeah, that's very sad and unfortunate. Yeah, because that's right. They were going to babysit for the Crumbs. And so they were there to go have a date night. And that's not what happened.
They were actually going swimming. And when they showed up, Rastus Russell was sitting on the front porch. He'd already killed Norman. He'd left his wife, Anne, there. They're both tied spread eagle to their respective beds in the bedroom. You know, the crime scene's just this bloody, gory Charles Manson type deal. And Rastus Russell sitting on the porch. He's got a sawed-off shotgun in his lap, bloody shirt. Why he hasn't left yet? He's there for money. He thinks they have money there, and he keeps demanding money. And they're saying, we don't have it. And so he's sitting there on the porch. Maybe he's plotting his next move, but while he's there, that's when the Crumbs show up and that confrontation ensues.
Yeah, you would think you'd want to get away from the scene, especially you're covered in blood. Maybe you'd want to change your shirt or, I don't know, something. But clearly, I don't think he was thinking very logically.
The person I interviewed that knew him, I said, a lot of people think he was crazy. He was in and out of these institutions, in and out of prison. But some people say he was crazy like a fox. He wasn't crazy. He pretended to be crazy to get out of jail sentences and things. I mean, he was obviously a psychopath, but he wasn't. His thought process was clear when it came to evading police, evading crime. He was almost a criminal genius. And he may, he's in an isolated corner of Crystal Beach. Nobody knows he's there and nobody else is around. Nobody can see him. So he might be taking his time figuring, I'm going to find that money before I leave here. And that's when this couple shows up.
You got to wonder if he felt defeated when he realized they really didn't have the money.
He may have been frustrated, or the other possibility is they did have the money and they weren't giving it up. Although I would think if you're being tied to a bed and you're being stabbed to death until you tell where the money is, you would give it up. And one of my theories was maybe after he killed Norman, Anne Browne did give up the money and he left with it. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what was in his mind. Yeah.
It's just a crazy, crazy story. And you hear these all the time. People who do like home invasions and stuff, they're on a mission to find stuff, but how do you even know what you're looking for is in the house? It blows my mind.
That's one of the key parts of the story is he was absolutely convinced there was money in this house. And the story I got from the gentleman that lived with him, Russell lived with his family, that his father told him this, and his father's the one that knew Russell better than he did, rented him the room in his house. His father told him that the story was that the Browns had owned a jewelry store somewhere up north. They were from New York, so my guess it would have been somewhere in New York, or they were affiliated with a jewelry store or something. And they concocted a scheme where they were going to have the jewelry store robbed. They were going to collect the insurance money, and then they would still get the jewels as well. So they would then sell the jewels on the black market or wherever else they sell them and keep the insurance money. And they hired Russell to go up and rob the store. Now, this is the key point, Tiffanie. Their first meeting with Russell was 2 months earlier. Russell then leaves the state for 2 months, and nobody knows where he is. So he had just gotten back about a week earlier from being gone. And this would match up perfectly with that theory that first meeting was to arrange the jewelry heist. Russell leaves the state. He does it. He comes back. He brings them the jewels. Or maybe he was back before and delivered them the jewels. And now he's waiting for his money. Okay, I did the job. Where's my cut? And they weren't giving him his cut. That's the story that this gentleman's father told. They hadn't paid up, and Russell's there to collect on his job. And that would explain why he's there for three and a half hours before he decides to rob them. If you're just going for a straight robbery, why do you sit around drinking coffee for 3.5 hours? Why not just rob them as soon as you get there and leave? So that leads speculation to that the first 3.5 hours were actually a negotiation that went badly.
That puts it in a whole different perspective. Like, the way you wrote the characters, they seem like such innocent, like, mom and pop. It's like these poor people. But you never know, again, what happens behind closed doors. So,
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of sympathy for them at the time. The newspaper articles at the time were very sympathetic towards the Browns. But when I talked to the locals, there was a lot of rumors floating around that may just not have been the full story. So that's where that part of
wow.
this comes from. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, they still do not deserve what happened to them, but you could see why somebody might lose their temper and insist that, yes, what I'm looking for is here because I gave it to you.
Exactly. And all the circumstantial evidence points to that story would make perfect sense. They were obviously having financial troubles. They didn't even own a car. They put their house up for sale, likely because they couldn't afford it, they needed the money, whatever. Anne Browne was looking at going back to work. Yeah, she's in her 60s. They're both retired. She's trying to get a job. So they're people with limited means, likely hurting for money. They had any types of ins with this type of jewelry scheme. It would make sense they might have been desperate enough to try something like that. And Russell would have been the perfect guy to hire for just such a deal.
Right, right. So I didn't make it to the very end, obviously, but I'm curious, was justice served?
Tiffanie, how could you not read the end of this book?
I didn't get to it. It's still on my thing to finish, but I have to know, like, was justice done?
Well, if you like nice, clean, gratifying endings, this delivers. This is a perfect Bonnie and Clyde type ending. Russell is actually, after the murder, he's captured in the Dunedin Flats, but he goes to jail 3 weeks later, he escapes Pinellas County Jail, which at the time was in downtown Clearwater. He escapes the day right after a hurricane. The power's out, the phones are out, deputies are busy, and he has plotted this. He knows exactly what he's doing. There's only one jailer on duty that night. Normally, there's at least two, and the guy on duty is a rookie. He's only been there for a few weeks. He's still learning the job. Russell takes advantage. He escapes. He's on the run then for 5 days, loose in Clearwater, Pinellas County, and the whole county is just terrified. And people, there's posses out looking for him. People are out of their houses. There's community. They're just combing the area, the streets, the orange groves. The National Guard's out. There's over 100 police officers from around the state here looking for him. They eventually track him to Sassa, and that's where he grew up. He spent his first 10 years there. That's where his family is, his extended family. It's a very rural, isolated area at the time, and he thinks he's safe there. And he's hiding out in an orange grove. He's stolen a car. He's robbed or burglarized a couple stores, so he has supplies. He has some money. All he really needs is to get some more gasoline and get a little more money, and he's going to make a run for the state line. He figures once he can get out of the state, back then, if you can get out of the state you're wanted in, your chances of getting caught start falling dramatically because they don't have the interstate communication like they do now. And he's hiding there thinking he's safe. He's got a little camp set up. He's right by the lake where he grew up, really familiar with the terrain. And an orange grove worker just happens to be coming through inspecting the storm damage. And he sees this suspicious car parked in the grove way back in the grove. And he's got a clothesline set up, and there's a fire pit and everything else. And he said, this is strange. So he calls it in to Hillsborough County deputies. They sent out a couple deputies to investigate, and when they see the car, they know immediately who it is because they know this car has been stolen. They suspect Russell's been driving this car. And when they find all the stolen goods in the back, they know it's him. So law enforcement swarms to this area, again, from all over Central Florida. They start tracking Russell through this orange grove. He knows they're tracking him. So he's going through the groves. They just have one dog, which is a tracking dog that's on his trail. Deputy Bob Spooner of Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and Officer Frazier of the Plant City Police Department are tracking him with the dog. And they're on his trail. They finally track him to a swamp right outside the orange grove, and they see him behind his tree. And Spooner's carrying a 12-gauge shotgun. Frazier's carrying a .38 pistol. So they point their weapons at the tree, and Spooner says, come out or we're going to kill you. Russell steps out from behind a tree. He's smoking a cigarette, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't surrender, but he doesn't get aggressive either. He just stands there smoking a cigarette. So all the officers have orders to shoot to kill. So Frazier immediately, when he doesn't surrender, Frazier immediately shoots him with his .38. Hits him twice in the torso, and this just enrages Russell, and he comes charging out from behind a tree. He has a switchblade knife in his hand, and Spooner's son told me that Spooner said he just come out of there like a wild man. And when he did, Spooner levels his shotgun and fires 3 bursts into him and pretty much cuts him in half. And Russell falls to the ground, flips over on his back. And when they run up to him, he says the words, according to both officers, you fellas killed me and I'm glad you did. And then he dies. It's Hollywood movie ending. And there was a lot of speculation. Is that really the way it went down? But that's the way they told it. It's all we have to go on. So we kind of have to believe it.
Right. That's crazy. Like, obviously, I'm glad he got captured, but at the same time, like, I hate when they get the easy way out. You know what I mean? I want you to sit in prison and think about what you did every day for the rest of your life.
That and a trial, we probably would have got the whole story of what really happened, because he said before, when he was in Pinellas County Jail, they were getting him indicted. They were going to have a trial, and they let him talk to the media. And he told the media, yes, I know the Browns. I knew the Browns. There's a lot I could say about it, but I'm not going to say anything until I get a lawyer. And unfortunately, that was the last interview he had, because he escaped shortly after that. And we may never know the absolute story of what happened.
That's so many stories, right? It's always
Yes.
usually speculation, but it's just such an interesting story. And I think this is a great read, and I promise I am going to finish it. I got more than halfway, but then my life took a shit. So
Well, I'm glad you got over that, and I hope you enjoy the rest. The audiobook will be out within the next 2 weeks as well. And I thought it was professionally narrated by actor George Newbern. If you watch TV show Scandal, he's on that show. But I was so thrilled with the audio version, because it really brought the story to life. And even I listened to it like I was hearing it for the first time. So it's, if you like audiobooks, that's going to be good.
yeah, but the paperback, it's out already, right?
Paperback and a hard copy as well. It's got a hardcover version, and we have a paperback version and ebook that are out now. You can get any of those formats.
Awesome. And on Amazon, are you in Barnes and Noble?
Yes, all major retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc.
Great. What do you want the readers to take away from this book?
A lot of people ask me that. I think it's just a great story. It reads like a movie, and a lot of my reviewers and comments tell me that. And that's exactly what I thought when I heard the story the first time. So I think I just want them to read it and enjoy it as a just engrossing true crime story that really has all the aspects of everything you want in a true crime story.
And it's real life. So, I mean, you got all of it.
You got all of it, and a lot of these locations are still around. Like I said, it's still around the county. Going to visit them was haunting for me, and there's a lot of pictures in the book what these places look like today, so you can actually go and see them and say, wow, this looks a lot like it did back then.
I can do that. I live very close.
Oh, well.
Awesome. I'm going to make sure that I put links to the books. Do you want me to also send them to your website? If anyone wants to get a hold of you, maybe somebody wants a movie in the works.
Yeah, actually, we've already drafted a screenplay, and we're now exploring avenues for both an indie feature film and a documentary. So yes, anybody interested in that type of thing, we're talking to a lot of different people now. So if that's something that might interest you, you can email me at author@mfgross.com. My website is mfgross.com, and the book title is Madman by mfgross.com. My author name's my name's Michael, but author name is MF Gross. I have a separate business, so I want to keep those things separate.
Gotcha. And
Right.
I'll make sure all links are in the show notes. So all they got to do is click and go. I think you did an amazing job. It is very captivating, the book. It almost like you can play it as if it is like a movie in your head. It was very well written. So you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate that.
Of course. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
The only thing I can add is if you read the book, you will be surprised at how many twists and turns and local people get pulled into this thing.
I can only imagine. I can't wait to finish it.
Well, good. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to follow, rate, and review. It helps more survivors find our community. Do you want to be part of the conversation and share your story? Visit truecrimeconnections.com. Until next time, be safe, be seen, and never forget, your story has power.